Today I am joined by a man you've heard me discuss many times, one of my heroes, inspiration, Mr. Jeff Speakman. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and hello to everybody listening.
Now, normally the first thing I ask would be either, in your case, how you got started in martial arts or how you get started in acting. But I would like to ask first, especially for all your fans out there, how are you feeling? How are you doing health-wise?
I'm doing incredibly well. I live in Las Vegas now. I was down for those first 8 months of 2013 when I fought my stage 4 cancer. And, it's 2 years to get your feet underneath you after that, and about 4 years to get back to zero. But, it's still on this side of the grass sort of a thing. The impending end of life faces all of us, and I think we're short-sighted in the fact that many of us just spend our entire lives not thinking about it, not preparing for it, not accepting the inevitable end of this plane of existence. And then when it comes up, it's shocking and it's horrible, and you buy into all kinds of ridiculousness about people who declare to know what's going to happen after you transition to the other side, and it's all because we're just not prepared for it. So I have never been like that. I have always understood that because there was a beginning, there will be an end. That's the duality of things. And so when I went through the hardest part of that, which was the long time it takes for it to settle in and realize where you are, the robotic surgery department of the hospital I went to in Duarte, California, City of Hope, she told me that if she were to perform surgery, she would have to get me to sign an agreement that would allow her to take my voice box, because her analysis of the situation was that the cancer had gone into my larynx. Otherwise, she would not do the surgery. And 3 days after that is when I met with the head of oncology, and we took a different tact on it. But she doesn't live in that world. She lives in the surgical world. So I had 3 days of being convinced that this was the end, and that I was prepared to take my own life, which I don't have any religious undertones to the way I look at the world, so I'm much freer of a thinker because of that. And so I had concluded that if this was going to be the end, I would accept that. And the only question that came to my mind was, did I have a good life? And I was able to really truthfully answer that question and say, yes, I have, because I've dedicated so much of my lifetime trying to make sure the world is a better place because I was here, which is one of the three main things that a true martial artist pursues in his life, that being number three. So I really, truly felt like all the things I had done with my life helped a lot of people helped me, and that I contributed greatly to the life experience for myself and for others. And I had resigned myself to take my own life when that time came. And then 3 days after that, I met with the head of oncology, and he assured me that they have the cure for this. So you can imagine, this is one of the top 3 cancer hospitals in the world, and you can imagine the extreme duality of that position. Because the robotic surgery head of department said, okay, this is it. It's not going to be the same ever. And then 3 days later, you go to another department and they say, we got this. We're going to do it. Our cure rate is like 85%, and that includes people in their 90s. So there's just no way you're going to die from this. And but the interesting journey of that was those 3 days when I thought I was going to die. And you start doing a thing they call making the list. And that is the list of the people you're going to contact to say goodbye and tell them that you're checking out and moving, transitioning to the other side, as I like to say, and express your gratitude for them affecting your life in that way. So I started to even make the list in those 3 days. That's how certain I was gone. So when I had this news from the other department, I just broke down and wept right there. And they, of course, are used to that. So he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Take your time. You're going to make it. We're going to do this together." All that stuff. It was an amazing, amazing journey. But you still don't know if you're going to make it, because a lot of people had the cancer I had, and they're dead now. So, it was a deep, heartfelt, gratifying journey, because the moment I was diagnosed, my whole Kenpo 5 family from around the world just rushed to my side. And then many, many martial art people from around the world also rushed to my side and confirmed my assumption that I have had a good life. Because otherwise, why would all these people come to express their hope and desire for you to continue to live?
How do you, now I assume you still have to go yearly for checkups, visits and such. How does that, if you don't mind me asking, affect you mentally? Do you get worried before, like your yearly checkups or anything, or do you feel confident and good now?
Well, you do the 5-year. If you can make it past the 5-year, you're good to go. And so we're on year 8. So in the earlier years, as well as especially the earlier months, anything that happens to you, you immediately feel like your cancer is back. Mm-hmm. There were even a couple of times I went in to get an endoscope done, where they go through your nose and down your throat and record the picture of what they see, because I was just, I gotta know. And as my doctor told me, he said, "No, you don't have it back. It's just everybody thinks they do. You're just sensitive to it, but okay, we'll get the test done." And it was never there. Now that takes years to fade, but it never leaves you. In my particular case, the type of throat cancer I had, if it's treated with this particular series of drugs, radiation, which I did, once it's gone, they don't believe it'll ever come back. So it's rare in that case. This could have been the same cancer if I didn't have it in my throat, or technically in my tongue muscle. Then that prognosis would not be the same. You would live the rest of your life, getting checkups every year and doing what you were thinking. But in this particular case, if they could get it and eliminate it, then it's just not coming back. So you kind of get a pass until whatever it is that comes along that threatens and ultimately takes your life anyhow.
Do they have any idea how you got it? I mean, did it run in your family, or or was it just?
I know it was a virus. So I had a viral cancer, and it's all the rage today. But there are many people, in fact, some of my black belts who got a virus, and it affected their heart, and they died, or it affected their brain. I mean, viruses are, a whole bunch of bad news wrapped up in a little ball of protein, and they will, they're a lot more powerful than we are, and they'll just come around and take all of us out sooner or later. So you just have to sort of prepare yourself and do the best. Look what we're going through here. They came up with a vaccine in 9 months instead of 5 years. Mm-hmm. We still lose 500,000 people in the United States alone. So, and it mutates, it changes, it appears to communicate with viruses, which is why it mutates and changes. And there's some kind of imperceivable consciousness that exists in all living things. We so arrogantly thought we were the only ones who had some consciousness, and certainly higher consciousness, although you wouldn't know that by looking at what we just went through in the last 4 years. But there does seem to be a system of some type of imperceivable consciousness and communication that goes on, even on single-cell organisms like different fungi that actually communicate and learn and remember and it's quite astonishing. It's just beyond our ability to comprehend it at this time.
One of the reasons, there's two reasons why I wanted to talk to you. Normally, when I do an interview, I don't say much except ask questions. But, of course, big fan of The Perfect Weapon. Like I said, I learned, I study Kenpo now because of you. But one of the real reasons I started studying Kenpo was my son. He saw The Perfect Weapon, and, he wanted to learn Kenpo. And, I had learned, of course, about your diagnosis. Before he started studying Kenpo, I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. So I had to have I'm on this is year 3. And mine hadn't spread, so they took my kidney out. Well, when you get that surgery done for 7 months, you're sitting on a couch. And I sat on a couch, and I really learned to enjoy bad food. So I got like horribly out of shape. I couldn't train. I couldn't lift. I couldn't do anything. So when I heard about you and when my son showed the interest in Kenpo, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get back in shape, and I'm going to learn Kenpo just like Jeff Speakman. And we were doing really good. Then, the pandemic hit, so we haven't trained in a while. I mean, the school's still open, but I don't. I've already had COVID. I'm kind of high risk because of what I had. I don't want to be on a mat and catch something. So my training's kind of done in my basement now.
Right.
But you were very inspirational, the way you overcame, especially stage 4. So I wanted you to know that you're the reason and you're the reason I started studying Kenpo. Because, like I said, I had belts in other styles, but because of you, I wanted myself and my entire family to learn Kenpo karate.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that. And that, as I have heard from various people around the world throughout the years, that similar kind of a story, it really is gratifying because that was what Mr. Parker wanted me to do, and that was the goal, to get Kenpo out there in the world in a way that has yet to be done. So we really feel that we did accomplish that with The Perfect Weapon.
Now, when you, because you studied Goju-Ryu before Kenpo, correct?
Right. In fact, that's how I got to Kenpo. I was attending what was then Missouri Southern State College. It's now university, and took a degree in general psychology, and so that's in Joplin. And then which is where I met Lou Angel, who just ironically happened to be living fairly close to there, and I got a full need-on from him by that time. And then when I graduated, he said, if you want to make martial arts your life, you should move to California and study Kenpo from Ed Parker because he's the best in the world. And he knew him from the years past and hadn't been in contact with him for a long time, but wrote me a letter of introduction. So I sold my car to pay for the U-Haul, and I moved to L.A. and stayed with some friends and walked into, this is 1983 in the summer, walked into the Long Beach Auditorium where he had his annual event, met him, bowed very deeply to him, and handed him this letter. And he was so happy to hear from his friend Lou Angel. He gave me his home phone number. He said, give me a couple of weeks to get past this tournament. Give me a call, and we'll get started. And that's exactly what happened. So I started training at the West Los Angeles School shortly after that. And then late 85 into 86, he asked me to no longer attend that school and come to his house once a week with 3 other people and become his personal students, which, of course, I did that instantly. Mm-hmm. And I was able to have enough time to go through the entire Kenpo system with him personally at the place he had evolved it to then. So during those years, I was able to understand how he thought and the scientific application of what Kenpo really was all about, which now, all these years later, I'm able, because I was under his tutelage and understood his thinking, I was able to apply that thinking to a whole new paradigm, which is how to do Kenpo on the ground. And hence, that's the name of what we do now. It's just Kenpo 5.0, representing the 5th evolution of Kenpo karate.
What was it like training at his house? What was the training sessions like? Were they pretty hard as far as like contact and everything?
It was by far and away much more instruction and thinking and analyzing and understanding motion, impact, variations of that, sequences of events that were more likely to happen. variations off that ideal sequence that would put different aspects forward from the same initial beginning. So those were this is not like 3.5 years I'm compiling into a few sentences, but that was essentially what the lessons really were. And if you paid attention and if you had an intellectual bandwidth big enough, you could really, really get who he was, what he was, how he got from where he was to here, and most importantly, what did he want for the future. So that's the real key thing, because many people knew him. There were still quite a few people who were much more senior than I, who are still around today. And but it always stunned me after he died how many of these people who were around him a lot longer than I was never really understood who he was, how brilliant he was, where he was going, what he wanted done. So that's why I really went off on my own, because as I continued to look around at all these people, they were nowhere near where he was. They just didn't get it. For whatever reason is irrelevant. So it took years to figure that one out. And as you know, he died just before Perfect Weapon came out. But he was on the set with me every day when there was a fight scene, day and night. And we became very, very close. And in that closeness were the personal conversations which led me to understand more of who he was and how he thought and where it was going. And even if you didn't have the opportunity, he inculcated throughout all of his writing are many quotes like, when I'm gone, I hope no one traditionalizes my art. And if you always remember, Kenpo will be the art of perpetual change, it will never become obsolete. That's what he was most concerned about, that there was nobody that was ready to pick it up and keep the ball rolling, keep evolving, keep changing, keep growing, so that Kenpo can remain relevant. Because as he very clearly wrote, if you don't do that, it will become obsolete. And to embrace change and co-create the future is how you become relevant and remain relevant. If you ignore change and stay traditionalized, change will just consume you. You will just be cannibalized, and here we are in a time of our life where the rate of change in the next 2 to 5 years is going to be bigger than the next 20 years, and that was bigger than the last 100 years. So the rate of change is increasing exponentially. If you don't get on the bandwagon and start thinking that way and get away from traditional thoughts that limit your ability to develop and create the future, then you're going to be one of the long, long list of people who are going to be unemployed and miserable and dejected because you didn't pick it up and move forward.
How did the acting come about?
I was teaching in the West LA dojo, which at that time was on the corner of Santa Monica Boulevard and Sepulveda. And someone who was bringing their kid in worked as a publicist in the movie industry. And she kept saying, you got to take what you do and go study acting and get out there, because I have never seen anything like this. And I was like, nah, I don't want to, that's just not my thing. I don't get it. And she kept, until finally one day she came in and said, look, here's the name and number of a good acting workshop. I know these people. They'll invite you in. You can watch. Just go watch. And I did. And I was really intrigued because, as I mentioned, I took a degree in psychology, so I'm very interested in behavior. And this looked to me like another opportunity to learn more about human behavior, just learning more about yourself and the method that they taught. So I did. I went into it. I studied acting for 5 years, went to many auditions, got some work. So when I got my chance at Paramount with The Perfect Weapon and we did a screen test, I was able to nail it because I did not go out before I was ready. I went to a wonderful workshop, and everybody in the acting world, and I'll tell you exactly the same, if you want to try that industry and go out there, don't go on auditions until you're ready. because they remember. They write your name down, and then you're not going to get asked back again if you walk in there and just choke. So 3 years, 5 years, study acting, go to plays, start going out on easy auditions where your confidence is high, get feedback, evolve, change, grow. Then when you're ready, if you are so fortunate to actually get a chance, like I got with Paramount, then you're only going to get that one shot. They are not going to try it again. They're not going to walk up and say, you know, that was nice, but how about if you try it like that? They don't do that. When you got your chance, you go in, they set the whole thing up, here it is, here's your direction, ready, go. And if you're not ready, they drop it.
Did you have a lot of, excuse me, like I knew of Kenpo, so to speak, before The Perfect Weapon, like through Ed Parker and everything, through the magazines, Black Belt Magazine and all that, but I had never seen it. You know, there's people listening, this was before the internet, so, you know, there wasn't a lot out there. And that was the first time that, you know, it was really, you know, here I'm in a big, you know, opening night movie theater watching this art that I've never seen before. Did you have a lot of input into writing that film?
I had some significant input into anything related to martial arts. So I didn't write, for example, the scene where teenage Jeff is first coming into Kenpo and all of the stuff in the dojo, and then he finally advances through the belts. I didn't write it, but I told them what it should be, and then they wrote it. But I did have control over all the fight scenes. And then after the movie was done, remember, I had done nothing before this. For Paramount to take somebody, yes, I studied acting for 5 years, but they looked at it as somebody off the street. You know, I didn't come from other movies, and I finally hit Perfect Weapon with Paramount. They took me in cold. But when I was watching the fight scenes, I kept going to the people at Paramount and saying, you know, there's stuff missing. I know we shot that. And they said, all right, show up in the editing room and you show us. And I went, great. So I went in there, met the editors, and first time ever in an editing bay. And they brought up all the fight scenes. And I said, okay, what's missing? And I said, I know we got that shot from the other camera angle. And then they would go back and they would go, oh, that belongs there. And I said, yes. Now, there's another one here, So the value of that, the reason why they then let me come in and work on the entire movie, was because they were throwing stuff away that made the fight scenes expanded and longer. They are the most expensive things to do, action scenes. And they are over in a flash. So that's why you see so many different camera angles to try to extend the fight scene or the car chase scene or the gun scene or whatever it is, because they're very expensive. They make great trailers, and that's the reason why people pay their money and go in and sit down in the movie theater in the first place. So I was giving them more of what they wanted, although I didn't know that. I was just making Kenpo work the right way. So then it worked for them, and they gave me final edit, final sound check, and choreography of all the fight scenes, and I had that through all 10 of the movies I started in after that.
Where did the dragon and the tiger ring come from?
Excuse me, that was right out of what I had mentioned earlier. When I was explaining to the writer, wonderful guy, everybody at Paramount was just totally and completely professional. It was just the best experience you can imagine. And so I went into the philosophy of what the tiger and the dragon represent in the martial arts, and what the fist, the closed hand covered by the open hand, the warrior and the scholar, these are the dimensions of the martial arts. And even on our crest, the tiger, which is an earthly creature, is down looking up at the dragon, which is above, which is not an earthly. It's an amalgamation of, you know, the body of a serpent and the head of a jackal and the talons of an eagle and blah, blah, blah. And so it is not a real creature from the earth. And it's always looking down at the tiger. So that's an extrapolation of the yin-yang symbol. So in everything physical, there's some non-physical, and in everything non-physical, there's a connection back to the physical. That's the Chinese yin-yang imbalance theory of the universe. So that's played out in many ways. So there's the tiger-dragon duality, if you will, but the connectivity of it both. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it is. I mean, it's contradictory to a certain extent, but there's a degree of harmony there, and it's supposed to represent life and the cycle of life, and the not good trying to reach to the good, and the good trying to reach down and help the not good become good, and it's the polarity of things. So we wanted that to play out in everything, and that's how it became The Ring and the talk of the tiger and the dragon. I'm sure you recall that the young Jeff says, "I'm just a tiger," and while the teacher's trying to say, "You need to become more of a dragon," that actually is played out in different language, but that's the thing of what martial arts always was, and still in many of the Chinese martial arts, it still is that way, where the instructor's real job is to try to find where you are imbalanced. And so maybe you have too much energy of aggression, or your diet is off, or other personal things in your life. So they're supposed to have embodied in them the wisdom and the depth and the analytics to be able to look at somebody and go, okay, this person needs more of this, that person needs more of that, for the purpose of bringing you into an energetically balanced human being so that you can live a more happy and productive life, and then hopefully spread that onto other people. That is the difference between being a martial artist and being a martial fighter. Because the lowest common denominator that connects us is beating the crap out of somebody. I don't want to live on that vibration. I want to live on a higher vibration where I'm making the world a better place. This is why MMA should be called MMF, mixed martial fighting, because there's nothing artistic about it at all. And so you say, what do I mean by artistic? Well, I just explained it. Where you care about humanity and humans and your interaction, and you want to empower someone with the overwhelming force to take on a problem if necessary, but you don't go out and create the problem. You can be from that world, but not of that world. You want to be a solution-based martial fighter. And that's what makes you a martial artist, because you're interested in making the world a better place because you're here. And whenever I speak that way, when I used to be invited to larger martial art events, sometimes I would get partial standing ovations because everybody would go, there it is. This is what the problem is. He understands it. And they would sort of join in and go, yep, that's it. But the only problem is it doesn't make any money compared to MMA. And it gets drowned out with the vulgarity of people screaming and yelling and macho and beat the crap out of one another and screaming crowds and hoisting people on their shoulders because one man fell from grace so they could rise above. I'm not interested in that interaction during the whatever heartbeats I have left on this earth.
Now, the fight scene, which is, I mean, it's iconic now. It's all over the internet. The fight with the great man that I interviewed, Mr. James Liu, when you fight him, him and his friends at the dojo up there in Chinatown. Normally, I'm a big fan of the old school, the Hong Kong martial arts films, where the guys are wearing clothes because they have some semblance of padding underneath it. You guys fought shirtless, and like I told James, Mr. Liu, I was like, okay, I'm sorry, you got your ass kicked. You know, I was like, he was beating the shit out of you, and you know, he had to laugh. How long did it take? That had to take you close to a week to film that scene, is my guess.
Let me give you some perspective here. In the lower budget movies that I was forced to do, which I'll explain more about later, you will get 6 hours, 8 hours, and that's it. We had 3 days of 12 hours a day to do that one fight. And when I say that to other people who have done what I've done, they pretty much hate me because they get 6 hours or 8 hours every day. Nobody gets it. But it was Paramount, so they had more money than they knew what to do with, so they gave me 3 days. And that was 3 days of 12 hours a day of continuous rock'em sock'em, street speed martial arts. And let me be clear, James took his piece of my butt home with him, too. He was taking his shots, and so was everybody else. But every single person who worked on that movie, and in many other movies, but let's just stay with Perfect Weapon, they knew Kenpo. They knew Ed Parker. And to them, to the stuntmen, it was a tremendous honor to be in the first Ed Parker Kenpo movie. And many of them came up and said, don't hold back. I'll take the hit for Mr. Parker. We're making history here. We have to make it look. And they took the hits. And they really did. And so did I. And, here we are, 30-some years later, talking about a fight scene in a movie. That was 32 years ago. And it endured the test of time. By virtue of the fact that you and I are talking about it.
Well, when you unload on him, finally, when you hulk up, you're mad, you stop the kick, you block him, and you start hitting all the knife edge chops and the open hand strikes. Right. The speed of that, I remember being, like I said, I saw it opening night. It was a packed house. And when you just all at once hit the 2 blocks and started going in the knife edges, the speed in that was so amazing. The whole theater just erupted. I'll never forget that because there never really was anything like that. Someone just to throw 2 blocks and then open up with a succession like that.
And that was a very accurate representative of exactly what Kenpo karate is in street fighting. That is how we train. That is what we do. And the reason it's fast, many people have fast twitch, nerve reflexes, muscle. Many athletes do. I happen to be one of them, but I'm certainly not alone in that. But the thing that makes Kenpo different is this thing we call the economy of motion. So because our hands don't travel through time and space as much as other arts, especially other Chinese arts, have much bigger circles. We have much smaller circles, much more direct lines. So the travel time of my hand going from point A to point B, which is your face, then coming off your face, rebounding off me, coming back to your groin, let's say, is much faster than somebody who's just trained in a traditional martial art because they don't have economy of motion. This is part of the brilliance of what Ed Parker did. He took the ancient fighting techniques, restudied them, analyzed them under an American type of thinking. Physics, principles, geometry, cause and effect relationships, variations. Strictly street fighting science. It was brilliant, groundbreaking. He was the first guy. And what that gave you is an understanding of at least the Newtonian physics world that we live in, of really how to strike a body so that the specific weapon hits at a particular geometric angle to disturb with pain and even with neurological responses or endocrine glands internal in the body, which debilitates it, which allows you to go to the next strike, the next strike, the next strike. So I create an action that evokes a reaction from you. Now, I already know what that reaction is going to be if I do this strike correctly. So that when you react from my action, I'm already waiting for the next move. I've already begun the second strike, even though you are in the midst of reacting to the first strike. Because I'm putting you there, because I know what the effects are going to be if I hit the body correctly. And that bit of genius that came from Ed Parker is what allowed us to move, what does allow us to move with such incredible speed and power, and going to, not good places to get hit. Trachea, neck, groin, solar plexus, inside of the knee, whipping across the eyes. All of that, that's not a default mechanism for Kenpo people. That's a primary target system. This is not a fight. This is about how to win. Now, is it going to work? Who knows? especially today. There's a complete evolution of martial arts with MMA and you're never going to talk to a guy who's more grateful to the Gracie family and the Machado family than me, because they brought reality crashing down on all of us starting in '91 when the Gracies came here from Brazil. Mm-hmm. And then you had a very clear choice. Bury your head in the sand, call yourself a traditional martial art, and close the doors and hope to God one of those guys don't come in. Or embrace the change. Create solutions. Bring that system of fighting into your system, evolve your system, expand your system, and create solutions in a completely new world, which is, okay, how do you do your Kenpo laying on your back? Well, I know how to do that. I can teach you how to do that. It's called Kenpo 5.0. And we now have franchise schools in 17 countries.
Now, when you did the fight scene with James Liu, and which I really liked how the movie was set because it was almost like a backwards crescendo. You have the big, flashy fight in the gym. We get to see a lot of this screamer work, which I'm a huge fan of. I wish I was better at those than what I am. And then it was a slower fight at the end when you fought the late Professor Toru Tanaka. Now, what was it like working with him in that fight scene where you're basically just hitting a wall?
Yeah, that's a very good description. Toru Tanaka was his stage name. His real name was Charles Kalani. He was Hawaiian, and he grew up with Ed Parker on the islands. They were childhood friends. Everybody thought he was a Japanese killer, and that was his stage name, a persona that he created for wrestling. Mm-hmm. Because he was a 7th-degree black belt in jiu-jitsu. And this guy was a monster. You just can't believe how big he was. The wardrobe people told me to buy a coat, because remember he wore a black suit. Mm-hmm. That was a size 60 portly, just to get his shoulders into a coat. That's how big they had to buy it. Jesus. And wonderful, wonderful guy, as you can imagine. I was thrilled to death to be in Ed Parker's movie. Loved me. I loved him. And when we did that fight scene in there, he was throwing me around like a rag doll. And I'm telling you, he was doing that for real. Because that guy was a monster. There was a scene where he grabs me by the hair and throws me into some boxes. Mm-hmm. And then he comes up behind me, grabs me by the belt with his right hand, grabs me behind the hair in the back of the head with his left hand, pulls me back and throws me again. So after all night, that was a night shoot, so the sun comes up and then you go home. I go home and go to bed, and then I get up in the morning and I'm so stiff, and I am in so much muscle pain, and I'm, oh my God, but I do Kenpo, so we beat the crap out of each other every night. So I'm getting out of bed just going, oh my God, I am really wrecked. And I stand up and I feel this unusual pain in the very small of my back. So I go in front of the mirror and I turn around and look, and there are 5 blue dots on the small of my back, which is where his fingertips hit before he grabbed my belt.
Jesus.
That's how strong this guy was. 5 perfect blue dots that were his fingertips, bruises on the small of my back, which is just hit, grab, and throw. So that tells you what a wrecking machine he was.
Now, I have to ask, because the 90s was, and forgive me for asking this, but I have to know, the 90s were such an amazing time for me, because I've got, I have my straight-to-video, I've got Lauren Avedon, I've got Keith Vitale, Cynthia Rothrock, Don the Dragon, I've got all these superstars I can watch. And then in the theater, we had Universal, we had Van Damme, Warner Brothers, we had Seagal. And I remember to this day the trailer for The Perfect Weapon. It even said International Kenpo Superstar, Jeff Speakman, his explosive debut. Most people back then got like 3-picture deals. It seemed to be kind of the average. And I saw The Perfect Weapon, and I loved it, and I waited, and like it was a couple of years later, and Street Night came out, but it didn't play theatrically here. It was like a straight-to-video here where I live. But why was there not another, if you don't mind me asking, another like big Paramount film?
I don't mind you asking. I'm going to shorten the story because it's complicated, but you are right. A guy by the name of Mark DeSalle, who did the first 3 Van Damme movies, that's who I signed with to do Perfect Weapon. So he, through a different process, we met. He signed me for 4 movies. So he let Van Damme go. Now he was looking for the next guy. And in that process, he was able to go to Paramount through another connection. Paramount took all 4 of the Speakman movies. They were going to write the first one, which they did. The Perfect Weapon was written for me. And then they had all of the remaining 3 options that DeSalle had, which he certainly had the right to do. Who wouldn't want him to do that, you know? So that was it. And I had a home at Paramount, and the president of Paramount became friendly with me and everybody there, and it turned out to be an enormous success and financial success as well. They predicted it would make so much, and we blew it away. And they were like, okay, now game is on. But the problem is, as I signed the deal with Paramount and DeSalle forced me to sign a new contract that if Paramount didn't do another movie, he would have 3 more movies to do. And we knew much about him and that he was not a good guy, so we fought to not do that. Because who would want to do a Paramount movie and then step way back and do, a Van Damme movie? Because we're up here doing A-list movies, and all of a sudden now we're going to be doing B and C movies. The problem was Paramount, which he kept forcing it on me, and at the 11th hour, Paramount came to my lawyer and said, look, get Speakman to sign the new deal with DeSalle, and we're going to go find somebody else. And I said, okay, sign the deal. So I signed it. They had such a miserable time with DeSalle, they didn't want to do another DeSalle movie. Then the guy that I signed with at Paramount got fired. And because of Godfather 3 going so horribly over budget and being such a nightmare, he got fired. Well, I signed with him. So now I'm the redheaded stepchild from the other guys. So Paramount just sat me on a shelf. They didn't have to. They had to pay me, but they didn't have to do another movie. Then, of course, you would say, well, then why did they let you go? Because they don't want somebody else to pick you up, Warner Brothers, let's say, and do a movie and be a success, because then Warner Brothers becomes the guy who gets the credit for making Speakman a star. So they're not going to let you go. So I had to sit. The Paramount option had to run out. DeSalle had a certain amount of time to make me pay or play on another movie, which he did. And I had no opportunity or no option but to accept that movie or be sued for the rest of my life by Mark DeSalle. I had no power because back when I signed that movie, Paramount was not backing me. If they would have said, no, here, sign the deal, Speakman, and you want to work with DeSalle after, that's your business. They didn't do that. They came up and said, you sign the DeSalle deal or you're gone. A Perfect Weapon would have never been made. So I signed it, and those are the consequences.
Now, I've heard a rumor over the years that one of the films that you were going to be attached to was going to feature you driving around on a bus. The bus would stop, you would fight people, and that movie was then later retooled to the big hit of that summer, Speed, with Keanu Reeves.
You happen to be correct. I'm not sure how you found that out, but that is correct. My second movie at Paramount was supposed to be Speed. I read the script. I was with the William Morris Agency. We took the deal. We went to Paramount. Hired writers, rewriting the script so the bus would stop so I could get off and have a fight scene and then have to get back on the bus. And with all of the changes at Paramount, a new president came in. He took a whole group of projects and did a thing that's called put them in turnaround, which means the other studios had the option of buying those scripts for what they have into them. They unload their inventory they're not using. Well, he took the movie Speed and sold it. And 24 hours later, we jumped on it, to Universal. We said, what the hell are you doing? This is Speakman's movie. You hired him. You paying him. You picked it. You own it. And he was like, oh, shit, I'll get it back. Don't worry. And he kept trying and never got it back. And so that's how Speed was supposed to be my movie at Paramount. Should have been my second movie.
Now, when you did Street Night, which I saw Street Night, and I would say this, one of the things, Street Night was a good movie. The only thing that left me disappointed, and I would say this if I ever got to talk to Steven Seagal, why I didn't care for Under Siege. I'm watching you in Street Night. You're shooting people, and I could shoot people. I wanted to see more Kenpo. The only thing I could ever figure throughout the years, maybe you just didn't have the budget for those elaborate fight scenes in the film.
Well, there was two things. You're talking about budgets that are now 1/3 to 1/4 of what I had with Perfect Weapon. And now and the second thing, which is of equal importance, maybe even greater importance, you're not dealing with very sophisticated filmmakers. These are the DeSalle slash and burn, do a movie, get it out for as cheap as you can so we can make more money. They don't care if it's going to hurt or help your career or what you're doing. They'd be thrilled if you went on and became a bigger star because they're going to re-release the movie that they shot for you, with you, for such a low budget. They own the rights. You don't. So they've got everything to gain and nothing to lose. And you have a choice. You want to do another movie or not? So you are subject to all kinds of stuff that you have no control over. And that's the hardest thing for people who are not in the movie business to really understand. Until you get to be Tom Cruise, you can't control many of the variables unless you go raise, the 10 million, 20 million bucks yourself. Then you can call the shots. But you're on somebody else's dime, their method of doing business, their editors, their story. They come to you with a script they want to do. Then they offer it to you. Then in my case, I have to put fight scenes in it. But I can only put fight scenes in it that allow me the budgeted time. Because time is money. So they go, okay, you got 6 hours to do this fight scene. You got 8 hours. And I would go, okay, I'll do it in 6 hours, but you got to give me 3 cameras, not 1, not 2. You got to give me 3, because then I can at least get the coverage and do a decent fight scene. So we at least got that done. But it's just the way it is, If I would have had Speed as my second movie, I would have called the shots for the next several movies. But it ain't my money.
No, when you went to doing from the Paramount to the straight to video films, were you ever approached by PM Entertainment or New Horizons, the companies that were doing all the straight to video martial arts? Because you would have been a major coup for one of those places to get you for their films.
Yes, but their budgets were even lower. So you're going to go with the higher budgets. You're going to go with the producers and directors who have a history of making movies that have a story, a beginning, a middle, and an end, not just the slash and burn martial art movies of the 60s. So that's a decision you make because you want to be in business with those people. It's just in Hollywood and Los Angeles, the rate of change of people moving from studio to studio, from job to job, they're just in a continuous circle of where is my next job going to come from? Where is my next movie going to come from? They're into one, they're moving on to the next right away. It's not when you're doing a movie, when you're actually physically, it is the best thing in the world. When you're not doing the movie and you're trying to get a job, it's the worst thing in the world. Because nobody gives a shit. Not your agents, not your managers, nobody. You're a dollar sign, and they don't care whether you live or die.
Was there ever another martial artist back in that day, in that I always considered the 90s such a heyday for martial arts films. Was there ever a martial artist that you wanted to work with in a film but never got the opportunity?
No, not really. Um, there was a time where we were in discussions with Chuck Norris to do a few of his shows, his TV series, like 6 or 8 of those, create a character. And that was right at the time that Warner Brothers picked me up to develop a TV show just for me. And so, of course, there was exclusivity in that deal, so that ended the Chuck Norris Walker Texas Ranger thing. And so I signed that deal. They put me on a holding deal for a year, and we started developing ideas, and they're sending me contracts that do not give me the final edit and sound check of my fight scenes. And I said, you got to give me this. I just did The Perfect Weapon. I just did 2 or 3 movies. When you look at what I've done, those things got done because I did them. I edited them. I know what I'm doing. And it's the art that I've spent my life training for. I have this responsibility now because Ed Parker died. Continue. Are you still there?
I am.
Okay. To continue on, with the way that Mr. Parker wanted me, and I'm not going to do it.
Now,
and then they said, okay, then you're not going to do it.
Was there ever a plan to make A Perfect Weapon 2?
No. No, the idea was always to move on to something else.
My goal, I didn't shoot for the stars. My goal was to just do movies for PM Entertainment. Get a little bit better shape, be a straight-to-video action star, work with Don the Dragon. That was always my goal. And I wasn't shooting for the Warner Brothers or Paramount in my life, but did it bother you to go from like a Paramount film to some of the straight-to-video films, or were you just happy to be showing your artwork?
Well, it's actually an equal combination of both. I mean, imagine yourself having the opportunity to do a movie like Perfect Weapon. Not only did you not screw it up, you actually nailed it. Everybody made money. You traveled all over the world. Everybody loved you. The press loved you. There was nothing but green lights, and then you get all that yanked out from underneath you. And you sit there and go, what is it that I did wrong? And you didn't do anything wrong. You're just a victim of circumstances, the Three Stooges say. Mm-hmm. So it was both, I just had the choice. Do you want to stop making movies? Or I was always hopeful that I would come back around once the DeSalle options were over. But by the time that was over, I was doing the DeSalle movies. Now I'm on the BC list. To get back up to the A list would be pretty much impossible. It was easier not doing anything. You're not yesterday's news anymore. But you had already done that, been there. Now you're doing movies with Avi Lerner and PM Entertainment, so nobody's going to want you.
One of the things that I've said this to other martial artists I've talked to, and I wanted to get your take on it. I personally, as someone who studied martial arts, I wanted to watch Jeff Speakman do Kenpo. I want to watch Sasha Mitchell kickbox. I want to watch Michael Jai White do Wing Chun. I don't necessarily want to see Hollywood actor A do fake martial arts in a film. Does it ever bother you when you see the movies where there's, and clearly, I mean, anyone can kind of tell where you're watching a martial arts film knowing the two people fighting do not have, but maybe went through a 1-week camp to learn how to do the fight scene. Does that ever bother you?
It doesn't bother me because I don't watch them. Because it would bother me too much.
I got you. And that's, what were you ever like kind of, I don't want to use the word jealous, but did you ever see some of the stars? Because back in your era, there were martial arts stars whose martial arts skills, we'll say, were questionable at best, that had the big films. Did that ever bother you?
No. I here and what you're referring to, and then generally throughout life, very seldom do I compare myself to other people. the norms I set for myself have nothing to do with other people, because then you're going to drag you down, because very few people live a good, fulfilling, hardworking life. Most of them just want to get by and they want to make money with the least amount of work, and it isn't the kind. Let's just say it's not my cup of tea. So I don't look at any of those people and have any kind of desire to be like them, work with them. The only guy I really, really like that I admire so much is Chuck Norris. Mm-hmm. Rest of them I don't really give a shit about.
You know, I've got to ask, and this is a question just for me because you're so, I mean, freaking amazing with them. I take it these screamers are your weapon of choice?
No, that was the thing we did in Kenpo. When you get to be a black belt, then that's one of the weapons that you pick up. Our favorite weapon in Kenpo is the knife. Mm-hmm. And I did a little bit of that in a movie called The Expert.
Yes.
But as you can imagine, it's very tough to shoot a realistic knife scene and not have the movie rated X.
Yeah, there's not very many really good knife films out there.
No, there really isn't. So, but that's always the weapon of choice. But every Kenpo guy focuses on hands and feet, because that's really what you're going to have out there. So, you know, get good at that and then default to guns and knives as a defense. But for us to pick up and make weapons a big deal like the Chinese, that's not high on the Kenpo priority list. So, like for me, when I created Kenpo 5.0, I said, you know, we got to shift focus and we got to bring this huge skill set that we know nothing about. We got to bring that into the art. We got to own that. That's a lot of work. That's years and years and years of work to do that. So let's get that done first, because that's what's really important. Because Kenpo Karate. Now we do Kenpo 5.0, as I mentioned. That's the fifth evolution of. But if an MMA guy fights a Kenpo Karate guy, the chances of him going to the ground are really, really high. And once he goes to the ground, if you don't know what you're doing, you're never going to survive that. And that's what Kenpo guys don't like to hear. That's why I don't get invited anywhere. Because I'm telling you, you guys got to pay attention. You got to listen. You got to grow. You got to change. You got to evolve. You got to incorporate all these things that we don't know. And they don't want to do it. And, all right, then don't do it. We'll do it.
And that's what I like, because like I said, I also have the judo background. So when I would spar with people, and and I sparred with primarily a taekwondo fighter, and once and I'm not saying anything great about me, when I double legged him and threw him down, he was lost. He didn't know what to do. He was just, he couldn't kick or punch on the ground. I was on top of him. So to know how you incorporated that into the style of Kenpo it's mind blowing.
It's a big deal. Recently, in the last 6 months, we lost one of our senior Kenpo guys by the name of Steve LeBounty, and I was very close to him. And he was the most senior guy after Mr. Parker died. Well, not really. There were a few others, but he was the one I looked up to the most. Let's put it that way. And I would always go to him and ask his permission for me to change the art and do this. And when I started getting the video series ready I would send it to him first. He was always the first guy to see anything. And he was very, very encouraging. He said, "This is great. Don't stop. No matter what anybody says, keep doing this. This is what Mr. Parker would have wanted you to do." Very, very supportive. So now, we did this in 2005. So now you fast forward to today, we've got 16, 17 years of continuing to hone Kenpo 5.0 and make it bigger and better, which I would suggest that's why we've become the biggest international Kenpo organization in history, because we have evolved and developed the system to now incorporate that huge world of ground fighting.
Now, at your school, because I know you have multiple schools, you're actually one of the teachers too, correct?
Oh, yeah, I'm in the dojo every day. I'm sitting there right now.
Now, see, that would be amazing to. I know COVID kind of screwed up a lot of things. Did that affect your school at all, or do you still have plenty of people coming to class?
We had to close the first 3 months of 2020 and then open under limited circumstances after that. But we've been open and, we've been doing just fine.
Do you do the virtual learning?
We did under lockdown. We don't do it now. Some of the other schools and some of the other schools in different countries still do that today. But we're able to remain open in Las Vegas.
Do you do, like, for the people that, can't, study with you, just we don't live there, do you have, like, the video series and stuff like that?
No, I do have all of that, and I just rewritten the entire system, and that is now going to be available to all my students worldwide and other people who would like to learn it at jeffspeakman.com. We're going to be coming out with the first wave of the new information, so we call it Kenpo 5.0 V-2, standing for version 2 of Kenpo 5.0. So within 30 to 60 days from now, everything is going to be accessible on jeffspeakman.com.
Well, that'll be fantastic. Are you going to, when everything opens back up fully, vaccinations and all are rolling out, are you going to do like seminars and stuff where people can come maybe do a camp, spend a weekend or anything like that and train with you?
Yes. For 25 years, I've had my annual event here in July. All my schools come from all around the world. We've had the biggest advanced tests in the history of Kenpo here in Las Vegas in July. We would have had our 25th anniversary in 2020. So last year and this year, we're still having the tournament, but virtually only. So we just passed on having it in July. It's just not going to be possible because half my population is coming from out of the U.S. And it's just not going to be available. So we're pushing all the big stuff that we were going to do. We'll be doing it in 2022, July.
Now, someone like me, then, when you do that, would be able to come and train with you for that time?
Absolutely. It's open to everyone.
That's what I want to hear. Now, one of the things I've got to say that I thought was very cool about The Perfect Weapon, well, actually more so about you, a lot of the martial artists in films back then were either very lean or synthetic, I guess would be the best way to say it, where as your character was, you were in really good shape. It was like, I could learn to fight like this man. I could be this man. You're very much I don't want to say you were the everyman of martial arts, but it was everything you did was something that someone with hard work could achieve. And I thought that was very inspirational.
Right. It's exactly the essence of Kenpo. Because it is based on science and physics and movement. So it isn't a traditional art at all. Although many people have traditionalized it by refusing to change and develop and grow, which was the mandate of Ed Parker, but it's actually easy to teach and easy to learn because it follows a scientific, logical cause and effect path. But it's very sophisticated and it's very heavy in the amount of information. So if you want to do it and you want to get a black belt in it, you got to be dedicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely the most, out of all the arts I've studied, it is definitely the most complex, to say the least. It flows very well, but yes, there's maybe it's because I'm older now, but many of the times I have to practice hours on end at night, just one or two simple moves. So it's very fluid, but yes, there's a lot of work involved in it. I won't say there's not.
Yeah, and you know what? It's of anything else in life, it's the same. All the stuff that's easy to do, you can go buy a black belt, like you were telling me earlier. You can get a black belt in a year and a half or 2 years, and somebody's paying enough money. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's true of Kenpo. It's digressed to Kenpo Karate, not Kenpo 5.0. I won't let that happen, of course. But for example, we're the only organization in the world that if you have a brown belt from me, you got to be in the test every year in Las Vegas, whether you're eligible to test or not. So if it's 3 or 4 years in between your stripes, you got to be in a test 3 or 4 times and never get promoted. And that means you better know your stuff, because everybody's going 200 miles an hour, and if you zig when you're supposed to zag, somebody's going to get hurt.
Now, I know you focus primarily on the teaching now. Any plans to maybe pop back up, do another movie?
Oh, the conversations I've had in the last few years are more about like a reality TV show or a docudrama kind of a conversation, which ultimately would reach a lot more people, by the way, under the way things are now versus the way they were when I was doing movies. But it's got to be just like, the series with Warner Brothers I told about. It's got to be the right way, or I'm not going to do it. I'm not for sale. I do very well with my organization around the world. I have a wonderful life. I'm married to the most terrific woman I've ever met. I'm happy beyond compare. Pre-COVID, I was out of the country 25% of the year, going to Australia, New Zealand, all over Europe, Brazil, Bolivia, Mexico, you name it. I was all over the place. And I have this relationship with my black belts around the world where we love each other deeply. And we know that it's about the love and friendship we have, and second is the karate we do. And that's what makes us such a tight group of people. And everybody's welcome, but nobody wants to do the work. They just want to get the belt.
What is your...
So if you really want to earn the belt and do the time and become part of an art that's about life, then we're your cup of tea. If not, then move on down the road.
I have to ask, because you incorporated the ground, there's only been, I remember back in UFC when it first started, Keith Hackney, Kenpo, he had moderate success. Chuck Liddell, of course, Kenpo, he had great success. Not a ton of Kenpo fighters in the UFC. Do you have any students that you would ever train to compete in Ultimate Fighting?
No, I really have nothing to do with that kind of thinking. I kind of mentioned that to you earlier. That's a world and a thing that I have no interest in. I want to be a martial artist, not a martial fighter.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, especially with the blending of the ground game and everything, it could be a game changer if some of that style showed up there.
Well, we have our own system of fighting called 5-0 Fighter, which is a continuous round, 2.5-2-minute round, 1 minute rest, 1 minute round, where the groin is a full contact target. There's no striking to the face, and the tap out is not the end of the fight. It's the only thing you can get 3 points for. So if you go on YouTube and put 5-0 Fighter in, you'll see we have a European championship, an Australian, New Zealand championship, 4 championships throughout the U.S., and then we have the World 5-0 Fighter Championship, which is my event in July in Las Vegas.
For all your fans like me out there and martial artists, you have the JeffSpeakman.com, you have the YouTube. Are you active on social media for people to follow you, like Twitter, Instagram, or anything like that?
I am just starting my own YouTube channel right now, which is to coincide with this new JeffSpeakman.com website that I've been telling you about. So other than that, I'm not on social media. It is not a wise use of my time. But now I'll be coming out with my YouTube channel very, very soon.
Well, I will be more than happy to help you promote it.
Thank you for that.
And I want to thank you so much for, I do plan when the pandemic is over to come to one of your seminars, if for anything, just to shake your hand, and thank you for inspiring me in many ways. It's been a great honor to talk to you.
It will be a great pleasure to meet you, and just want to say to everybody who's listening, everybody's welcome. We're open. We want to make friends. We want to build a bigger life based on the depth and integrity of the martial art community. So if you're looking for friends who want to live the right life and do the right thing, well, we're your group.
Well, it sounds like an amazing group to be a part of, and I really can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk with me today.
It has been my pleasure. I really, really, truly appreciate the invitation.